Hello, and welcome to this brief presentation on Chapter 11, Information Systems Management. Since management information systems are crucial to the success of any organization, it is crucial that they are managed with the same care as other organizational resources. In this module, we will look at the issues involved in managing information systems and information technology resources. At the end of this module, you will be able to discuss the functions of the IS department of an organization and the roles in an IS department, discuss the pros and cons of outsourcing, and discuss the rights and responsibilities of users of an organization's IS resources. Since MIS is so crucial to many organizations, most larger organizations have a separate IS department, sometimes called IT department. The IS department has several functions. Since the primary purpose of an organization is to achieve its goals and strategies, the first role of, in particular, large IS departments is to plan the use of IS to accomplish these goals and strategies. Obviously, this often requires interactions with top-level executives in the organization. And there are a number of issues that need to be addressed during the planning process, including making sure that IS aligns with the strategy the organization has adopted, communicating any IS-related issues to executives, developing and enforcing IS priorities and policies, and sponsoring a steering group, including users, to help IS resolve any issues. Many organizations use outsourcing for at least part of their information systems, i.e. they hire another organization to perform some of the IS services. We'll talk a little more about outsourcing later in this lecture, but for the time being it is sufficient to point out that when you outsource, you need to manage the vendors. This then is a second function of the IS department. As we saw in the previous module, information security is an important issue for all organizations, and IS therefore needs to make sure that it protects an organization's information assets. Finally, IS must develop, operate, and maintain the computing infrastructure and the applications that run on it to support its various business users. While the way in which IS departments are structured offers difference between organizations, there are a few roles that you will find in most IS departments. The first is the role of the CIO, Chief Information Officer, essentially the director of the IS department. Many departments also have a CTO, Chief Technology Officer, whose main role it is to keep an eye out for emerging technologies and advise the CIO about such developments. In addition, many IS departments have a unit dedicating to operations, whose main responsibility it is to make sure the computing infrastructure is up and running, and often includes the roles of network administrator and database administrator. And in keeping with the function of the IS department to develop, operate, and maintain applications, many IS departments also have a unit devoted to the development of new applications. Such units often include the business intelligence function, and may include systems and business analysts, who often act as a bridge between IS and the rest of the business, and identify existing or emerging needs of the business and determine how best to meet these needs. Finally, given the importance of security, many IS departments now also have a separate unit dedicated to security, often headed by a CSO, a Chief Security Officer. As said, many organizations outsource at least some of their IT operations. Outsourcing is defined as the hiring of another organization to perform its service. While it is often discussed in the context of IS, outsourcing also pertains to many other functions, such as office cleaning or catering services. A good example of outsourcing in IT is the use of the cloud, discussed in Module 6. Moreover, when it comes to outsourcing IT operations, the implicit assumption often is that this is to overseas organizations, often in India, but this is not accurate. You can outsource part of your IT operations to domestic vendors as well. For example, an organization that decides to use Amazon Cloud Services, it's outsourcing part of its operations to a domestic vendor. The slide also contains a table with the advantages and drawbacks of outsourcing, and you will recognize many of these from the discussion of the cloud in Module 6. Thus, some of the advantages of using outsourcing relate to management. Your outsourcer essentially takes over the management of the IS functions that you outsourced. Also, you often see a significant reduction in cost, as the vendor, because of economies of scale, can provide the service cheaper than you can do in-house. Finally, outsourcing some of your IS operations significantly reduces risks. For example, many in-house IS development projects are late and over budget, and by outsourcing, you reduce your financial exposure. The drawbacks are also similar to the ones we discussed in the context of the cloud. Thus, you will need to manage the vendor. You can't simply outsource and forget about it. For example, you will need to make sure that the vendor meets their contractual obligations. You also lose control over your IT assets, and the short-term financial gains may be offset by a longer-term cost. And in many cases, you are locked into a vendor with all the risk that this entails. However, despite these drawbacks, more and more organizations are outsourcing more and more of their IS operations. Finally, as a user of IS resources of your organization, you have certain rights and responsibilities. This slide duplicates the table in the textbook, and I encourage you to read the relevant section in the textbook on user rights and responsibilities. And this concludes this brief lecture. As before, please read the chapter in the textbook and get in touch if you have any problems. Thank you.